back, everybody, to another episode of the Junkyard Dawgcast. I'm your host, Jordan Hill. Got Kipp Adams. Ben Wolk will join us momentarily on this Tuesday afternoon, and we are going to get into quite a bit on this episode of the Junkyard Dawgcast. We will start this episode talking about Georgia's loss to Alabama, some of the things that have stuck with us over the weekend, some of the things that are still worth discussing a few days removed from that loss. We're going to talk about Kentucky week. Georgia getting ready to play the Wildcats, 12 p.m. Eastern time. That will be televised on ABC. We had a chance to talk to Kirby Smart and some players on Monday. So got a sense from them, some of the things that have stuck with them from Alabama, and also some thoughts on Kentucky. Later on, we're going to talk about recruiting, a very productive weekend for the Bulldogs. They picked up a couple of 2027 offensive linemen. Talk about the coaching carousel, do another carousel check-in, and close things out with Georgia basketball. But Kip, to start this thing out, we got to go back to the weekend. We had about a 40-minute podcast trying to recap what we saw in Sanford Stadium. This was a good game for a Tuesday episode to try to come back and make sense of and get a chance to watch it back and share some thoughts. So I'll start with you. A few days removed from that 24-21 loss, what sticks with you from that game from the Georgia perspective, and just what's on your mind from it?
I mean, there's so many things to think about with this game. It gave us many, I think, teaching moments for Georgia's coaching staff in the film room that you have to imagine that, I mean, they have to be kicking themselves because there have been some Georgia games against Alabama where you just kind of knew as soon as it got away from them that, this was going to be another loss. This was not one of those games. This is a game that Georgia left points on the board and had a chance to win. And there are so many different parts of this game that are worth us continuing to talk about and break down. But again, the beginning of the game where you spot them 14 points again, your coaching staff, Kirby Smart as a defensive mind, Glenn Schumann getting kind of a lot of hate from the fan base, and some of it rightfully so because they got out coached. You're coming off a bye week. You have your set plays. You're running on script, and Alabama had the better script in this game. I think they prepared Ty Simpson as well as you possibly can to know what Georgia planned to do to try to get to him. They looked at Georgia's personnel and said they're going to send blitzers, and they did. For all a lot of comments talking about how Georgia needed to be more aggressive, it was kind of the opposite of how it played out as far as Georgia's defense finding success. In the first half, they sent one or two inside linebackers often. They just never got home. And I think that is where you saw Ryan Grubb out scheme them with screens. And you have to credit Ty Simpson. He got that ball out quickly. He even had Chris Cole with a hand on him and got the ball out. And in the second half, when they shut them Alabama down, they went forefront, played coverage. They made the adjustments. But again, the first half, that goes to the bye week. That goes to the game plan. They got out game planned in that. And that was the first thing that kind of really caught my eye in that. And I think overall, from a coaching perspective, that is where Georgia lost this football game. But we're going to break down the big plays, the big moments in this game. And Georgia basically went 0 for 3 on the big moments in this game. But I think overall, when you look at this, this was a winnable game for Georgia. And that is not something that's going to give Georgia fans they're not going to feel much better about it, but they still kind of should, because I do think you still see signs from this game that Georgia can improve as the season goes on.
To your point, it's not much consolation to say, yeah, you could have won that game, but I mean, I think that's totally fair. I thought you made a great point about the linebackers because, people were upset about not being able to get home, and they were sending them, they were trying, and just they could not get there. One, like you said, Ty Simpson did a good job getting the ball out, and two, Alabama protected really well. I mean, none of Georgia's front could really affect him during the course of that game. And they took advantage. And, on Sunday I wrote the 5 plays that changed the game. And there's part of me that hates this from the perspective of some of Georgia's players. But, a couple of the plays on there were mistakes or missed opportunities by Georgia. The Nate Frazier fumble and the Talon Taylor drop. And, on one hand, you can't let those plays linger. But when you lose a game by 3, when you fumble the football deep in your own territory and they turn that into 3 points, that's huge. And then when you drop what should have been a touchdown, a go-ahead touchdown, um, that matters when the game is all said and done. One quick thing I wanted to say before I let Ben give his thoughts. I saw a lot of people after this game upset about Gunnar Stockton, and even during the game, I didn't really understand that. And after watching the game, I don't really understand that. I think two things can be true: that Ty Simpson was outstanding. Ty Simpson had a fantastic game. But I didn't see anything from Gunnar that was cause for concern or they've got to make a change and this guy's not got it. I mean, my biggest criticism, I wrote about this in my rewatch story on Monday, some of his screen passes, some of his, get the ball and get it out quick were not very accurate. I think about a screen to Zach Branch that just wasn't quite on the money and he had to adjust, and I think it affected how many yards he picked up. But Gunnar made some big plays. I mean, I saw someone saying Georgia didn't complete a pass on third down. I know that is inaccurate, and the play he made in I think the fourth quarter, it's like 3rd and 9 or 3rd and 11, and he threw a bullet to Zach Branch, and Zach Branch deserves a lot of credit because he went up and caught it and made the play to keep that drive alive. Gunnar didn't play perfect, but he didn't turn the ball over, and they leaned on the run a lot, and he made plays when he had to. I had no complaints about Gunnar Stockton. You can say Ty Simpson had a better game, and I think he did. There were opportunities down the field. I will say that Gunnar didn't hit. There was at least one time he could have took off running or hit London Humphreys on a drag that was open, and he didn't, and that drive winds up ending. But I mean, I don't hit the panic button across the board with this Georgia team. I mean, there's stuff they clearly have to clean up, but as much as everybody wants to fire everybody and cut everybody and just try to restart this whole thing, it's not that dire, and the people in the program know that, and they're ready to turn the page and get ready for Kentucky. Ben, what has stuck with you from Saturday? Anything in particular you want to jump into?
Well, I think you all nailed a lot of the high points of it. I mean, my biggest takeaway from rewatching the game, and this is potentially an unpopular opinion, I don't have many different takeaways from the Tennessee game as I did the Alabama game. A lot of the things we're talking about, Georgia's not able to get home. Georgia has some susceptibility down the field in the passing game. It looked a little bit different. I think that Ty Simpson and those 3 wide receivers, we spent all week talking about Ryan Williams and Jeremy Bernard, and then Isaiah Horton goes out and is their most productive wide receiver in that game. And so you look at those 3 wide receivers, what they were able to do, I think, was a little bit more clinical than the way that Tennessee went about attacking Georgia down the field. But it really didn't look a whole lot different. Like, I think that the big difference in this game and what we're talking about versus the conversations that we were having 2 weeks ago, or maybe should have been having 2 weeks ago, is just the outcome on the scoreboard. I mean, I think that the margins and the moments in the Tennessee game and the Alabama game are what dictated this one. I mean, we've talked about in the Tennessee game, the 4th and 6 play, the missed field goal. Those were the types of, Tennessee getting the ball late and having a chance to put it away, and they end up settling for a field goal. Like, those moments determine the Tennessee game. I think the same type of thing happened with the Georgia-Alabama game. I mean, you have the drop, you have the fumble, you have the inability to pick up things on 4th down when you've been running the ball down their throats all night long. And there's a lot, people are going to want to fire coaches or change the way that Georgia schemes things up or the way that coaches address game planning moving forward. And unpopular opinion, I don't think Georgia needs to change a whole lot. I think Georgia is who it is. I think that Gunnar Stockton, what he did in that game is the most common version of Gunnar Stockton that you're going to get. He didn't turn the ball over. He made enough plays that could have put you in position to win. He should have thrown for about 200 yards, not 130. So it should have looked a little bit different, but he's not going to, we've talked before, like, he's not going to get you out of these crazy holes passing the football the way that we might have seen in past seasons. you can live with that. Georgia's going to run the football on it. Seems like most teams this season. I mean, 200, 220 seems like a pretty consistent thing that Georgia's going to be able to be doing. Georgia's probably not going to be rushing the passer that consistently, or at least getting the quarterback on the ground as regularly as you might want them to. And we know, we've said it all offseason. I mean, I think that we let the first two games skew how we talked about Georgia defensively a little bit. And Kirby Smart even brought that up after the Austin Peay game, saying Georgia hasn't been challenged yet. I don't think we really have any idea of what this looks like defensively. But if you go back to the offseason, we were talking about how thin and young this defensive front was. We were talking about how uncertain some of the defensive back spots were. And I think that it's not a huge red flag. I don't think you can shut out Alabama in the second half of a game and act like something is just this grotesque red flag that's not fixable. But there are clearly some spots where you can take advantage of Georgia defensively, and people aren't going to be as scared matching up against Georgia defensively as they maybe have been in the past. But quite frankly, like, I look at this game and I say, Ty Simpson was awesome. Those are 3 NFL wide receivers that Alabama's got on their side. And, you know, I think in certain spots, especially end of first half, early in the game, and then icing the game out, Ryan Grubb had some really good moments. And whenever you lose a game, everyone's always going to say that the opposing, you know, coaches completely out-schemed you and completely out-coached you. And we're a 1-yard run away from everyone saying that Kirby Smart and Glenn Schumann and Mike Bobo found a way to completely out-coach Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb in the second half. So I think that some of that will be made, there will be too much made out of that. But I do think you got to ask the question every time we have one of these games, like, how in the world does it seem that Alabama finds a way? I mean, it's sort of the flip side of what we talked about from the Tennessee game. How does Georgia find a way to win these games every single time? How does Alabama find a way to win these games every single time? I mean, it was another one where, probably more than anyone before it, that when you look back at it after the fact, you're like, how did Georgia not win this game? I mean, obviously Alabama threw for more yards, ended up having more total yards, ended up dominating on third down, and won the turnover battle. So that's how they did it. But if you look at basically everything else throughout the game, I mean, I think that it all favors Georgia. You look, you know, I think that sometimes it's painful to hear it, but the net success rate ratio of like who won the success rate battle in the game, Georgia won it. I'm not saying convincingly, but it was a pretty, you know, hefty margin of Georgia winning the success rate battle in that game. But third downs and turnovers kind of tells the story in that one.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Cole Kublik had the stat that Georgia gave up 13 third down conversions, most in the past 30 years. And it may go even further back. I imagine that's as far back as the stats he was looking at would go. And, yeah, the only other things I want to throw in there, Chauncey Bowens is a beast. I think he's put himself in position to be the lead back. I thought the offensive line held up pretty well, you know, on rewatch and how they played. There were a few mistakes here and there. I think you saw some inexperienced mistakes at times from Bo Hewley. You know, he had a legal man downfield on the first drive, and then I think it was the very last drive he got called for a hold. But on the whole, they played really well. Only other thing I was going to throw in there, I meant to say this when I was talking about Gunnar Stockton. I think the discussion about Gunnar is so different if Talon Taylor catches that football. Mm-hmm. I think you don't have nearly as many people upset about Gunnar and saying that, you know, he's not up for it.
I do want to, and this is going to sound like patronizing probably for fans or for Talon, I guess, the way that I say this, but like I do, what I think is just befuddling to me, Talon Taylor, of all the guys that I've covered since I've been back covering Georgia recruiting, is the most sure-handed wide receiver of anybody that Georgia has recruited. And so for it to happen in that spot is, I know, very painful for him. I know that that's going to eat at him just because I know of how competitive he is by nature. I also know that because it's really the first big moment that anyone's been exposed to Talon Taylor, it's going to leave a bad taste in their mouth about Talon Taylor. I'm going to just go out on a limb and call this one right now. I think Talon Taylor has a really big day on Saturday against Kentucky because I think he's the type of player that, one, is going to bounce back from that, and two, I think that Georgia wants to make clear that he's someone that can be effective. The fact that he is the guy that they are taking that shot to in an Alabama game like that, when you're down one score and that's going to be the go-ahead score, I think tells you a ton about how this coaching staff feels about Talon Taylor. And I think that don't let that moment be how you view him going forward. I know it's tough to do that because that's all you've really seen of him, but he's a guy that Georgia is going to need him to make big plays this season. Because when you look at what Georgia did receiving, I mean, Colby Young had a good day. Other than that, I think there was only 2 other receivers that caught passes. I think it was Sokovie White for 5 or 9. It was London Humphreys for 5 or 9. So Georgia needs to find some receivers that can be explosive in the downfield passing game beyond just Colby Young, and I think that Talon Taylor will be that guy.
Yeah, Chauncey Bowens had like 4 catches, and Cash Jones had 1 late. I wanted to read this quote because you mentioned Talon Taylor. Kirby on Monday was asked about helping a guy like Talon, a guy like Ellis Robinson, who had that really boneheaded diving on the pile in the fourth quarter, basically helping them move past that. Kirby said, quote, "You show confidence in them, you love on them, you discipline them, you grow them, you try to get them better. Both those guys are talented players. Ellis had some really good plays in the game. Talon's deal was tough, but Talon will grow from it. He's a tough, competitive kid. He practices his butt off. People don't give him enough credit for it. He's changed our punt team in terms of he's replaced an Arian and a Dom as a gunner and been really elite. Every time we've called his number, he's answered it. He's going to continue to do that." I think that Ben's spot on. I think that, and even to also throw in Nate Frazier, who was not part of that question, but it applies to him too. I think Georgia's going to make a concerted effort to build some confidence in those guys, to show them that, that just because you made a mistake, we're still counting on you. We need you, and you got to step up. One other thing I wanted to throw out there, because I am interested in getting y'all's opinion. It's kind of shorthand when things aren't going bad for Georgia that everybody wants to fire Mike Bobo. I thought Mike called a fine game. I could point to 2 or 3 plays that didn't really make sense to me. Really the biggest one wasn't even the Cash Jones play everybody's talking about. They had, I think, on Georgia's final drive, just a throw out of the flats to Cash that had no shot. But I thought Mike called a really good game. The fake jet that Dylan Bell took up the sideline was pretty. The touchdown run to Chauncey Bowens for, I think that was Georgia's first touchdown. They move Oscar Delp in motion, and he basically goes in untouched. I had no problem with the game that Mike called. Kipp, did you come away frustrated or have any negative thoughts on the offensive play call?
I think that establishing the run game was the right call, making sure that you're not putting Gunner in bad situations to where maybe, he does make a poor decision throwing the ball, but at the same time, you still don't use, the middle of the field a lot in the passing game. The intermediate passing game is still not part of this offense overall, but I think my main takeaway is that this is one of the poor coach games from Georgia that I've seen in terms of you're over rotating your players. You both talked about, Chauncey Bowens, how, strong of a game he had, how, Talon Taylor is one of the most sure-handed guys. But just because you see cover 2, bringing him off the bench for that moment, that's a tough introduction for him in this football game. You put him in a situation to where he's just coming out there cold. And you did the same thing with Cash Jones. Chauncey Bowens had already given the best rushing performance against an SEC opponent since they played Vandy in 2023 in 3 quarters. They did not hand the ball off to him one time in the fourth quarter. So their line of thinking was that Cash Jones is worth being on the field for 3rd and 4th down, just falls flat on its face. When you have a player performing so much better than anybody else, in your backfield, and definitely better than Cash has really ever done. Not trying to just put it on him. He's out there just giving it his all and has always done that for Georgia. But you've seen a much better performance than what he's ever shown you. And I think that they outthought themselves both moments, putting Talon in that situation when he should have had more snaps going up to that. I mean, you had, as you said, Colby Young's playing 40 plus snaps a game. Zachariah Branch is out there for 30 plus. London Humphreys is out there, and so is Dylan Bell for over 20 snaps. It's just, that is a tough spot because you saw a look that you on film. You said, hey, this is when we put Talon Taylor in there. And I just think that they overthought it on both situations, and they were both two of the arguably three biggest plays of the game on offense. And so it leaves a bad taste in everyone's mouth that this team just left probably 10 to 14 points on the board.
Yeah, I mean, it's frustrating for Georgia fans because it's right there. It's not like Alabama just went out there and dominated you. It was right there. You couldn't make the plays that you had to have. Ben, what was your thoughts on just the game Mike Bobo called, and just if you thought there were bigger issues, or just your take on it?
Well, just generally, and again, this is how it should go in most good football games between evenly matched teams with good coaches on both sides. But like Schumann was a little bit taken advantage of early. Alabama's rattling off a couple of 14-play drives, and then Georgia shuts Alabama out in the second half. So it's like, what version of Schumann do you want to talk about in that game, right? Like Bobo, I thought there were some great moments. Georgia running the ball for 227 yards. Chauncey Bowen's getting involved there. It's tough that you have to make the decision to basically pull Nate Frazier from the game and to still run the ball as effectively as Georgia did. I mean, I think it says a lot about this offense and the play calling that was going on. You mentioned the Dylan Bell creativity. I mean, I think while I agree with Kipp, when you bring Talon Taylor off cold, it's like you did scheme up having a guy behind a defense splitting the cover two safeties. Like, Mike Bobo deserves a little bit of credit for that. I think the problem is any equity that you might have built up during that game was basically lost in the way that they handled the 3rd and 4 fourth down situation. And whether it's personnel, whether it was the decision to hurry up, whether it was the decision to go for it at all, like whatever it is that you take issue with on that play, it's going to be hard for people to give any kind of positive feedback to the offensive performance in that game when you have a moment like that where you're staring it straight in the face and you're not able to execute. I will also say this. I don't know if we're going to talk about this fourth down play anymore, but I'm pulling up the screen grab of it. I will say, when you pull up the screen grab of this, I don't care if that was you back there taking that handoff, Kipp. I don't know how this did not pick up positive yards. I think it's LT Overton that splits Juan Gaston and Dontrell Glover right here. Like, we're only looking at the screen grab of it, but even the video of it is crazy. Like, Juan sort of gives him a little nudge. I don't know whose responsibilities were what, so I'm not going to point fingers on who was supposed to do what, but Juan gives him a little nudge, and he almost trampolines off of Dontrell's right shoulder. And then, like, when I'm looking at this from this moment right here, I'm like, it doesn't matter what anyone does. Cash Jones is scoring a touchdown on this play. So it is one of those things where this is going to be the moment that everyone is endlessly critical of. And if Georgia doesn't end up making the playoff this year, or Georgia struggles, like, this is going to be a moment that ultimately decided the future of who's coaching this, this offense. But my goodness, how did this? I mean, I can understand how they said, let's hurry this up. They've got one guy coming off the edge. Cash is going to be able to beat him. He's got to just beat 3 to score. And he doesn't even have to beat 3 to get a first down. He's got to beat 3 to score. If everything else is blocked right up front, that's an easy first down. We might not be talking about a Georgia win. We might just be talking about how the defense gave up a big play late again 2 years in a row, for all we know. But I will say, just this screenshot has lasered into my brain, and I've looked at it a bunch of times just saying, like, how did Georgia not pick up 1 yard? And while the criticisms are going to be fair, and I'm not even going to tell you not to be critical of how they handled hurry up or personnel, I can look at this and sort of understand why they did it, because it's like, it's right there. It's right there.
I have thoughts here.
Go ahead, Kip.
I mean, that right there, though, if we're going to reverse engineer how that was a good decision, you're coming out of a huddle and asking, or no huddle, and asking 2 freshmen to know their blocking assignment. That was your thought process on 2 plays. They went into this thinking, we got 2 plays to get the first down. All right. And you're asking a true freshman to know who to block. And it's pretty clear They both blocked this. They chose incorrectly and left the man free. And I think you can argue, I think it was probably Dontrell Glover that didn't get his hand on there because I think they wanted Juan to get to the next level is the way that it looks. But this was still out of 4 possible choices. This was the 4th best decision they could have made. The first being wait to see if there's a replay, get your first down. Every single angle looks like this guy, the Gunnar Stockton got the first down. That's one. Okay. But then that opens up the next 2 scenarios where wait to see if there's a replay. You don't get the first down. Try and get them off sides, take the penalty, kick a field goal. That's the second best choice there. You get 3 points with your automatic kicker in this situation. You tie the football game. The third best choice, wait to see if there's a replay. You don't get the first down. You put your best personnel on the field and prepare them for the assignment in the huddle. And when we're talking about whether or not I can break that tackle, you put in Chauncey Bowens, who, I mean, no offense to myself, he's going to break the tackle like much better than I could ever dream of doing it and give you a situation, prepare you to actually get the first down. They chose option 4. And again, that's why we're trying to reverse engineer how this looked on film as a good call, just like the Talon Taylor situation. I mean, he got open, but neither of those plays worked. And so now we're just trying to figure out why it could have worked instead of why you shouldn't have probably done that to begin with.
I don't disagree. It was the 4th out of 4 options. I'm just saying all 4 options should have worked.
Kipp made the point I was going to bring up was that why are you running behind 2 true freshmen?
Yeah.
Who do you
Well,
have
I think
the
that's
most
the look,
confidence?
though. Like, I think that when you do that right there, like, that's just the look that they were giving you. Like,
that's why they gave him the look.
Yeah. Well, that's fair. That's fair. That's why they gave him the look. But it's also like, it didn't happen. Yeah. But like Juan and Dontrell can easily make that play. Like that's like
they probably do 6 games from now, and that is the plus side.
They probably did.
Those guys are going to get so much better.
That. I mean, they did it all. I mean, the right side of the offensive line was very good all night long. Though I will say, I think all of the explosive runs except for one were going to the left side of the line. But
that sounds right. I mean, my thing, and I read about this on Monday. Again, reacting to it after the fact, I feel like it was kind of a mess. But my thing was they should have got a review. If you get the first down, cool. We got the first down. If not, we brought in I think I would have probably put. I guess Bowens would have made sense with how he was running, but Josh McCray too, because McCray was running really hard. Like at the very least, you get a chance to put the personnel you want on the field, and maybe you get lucky, and maybe you don't have to go for it on 4th down because you picked it up the play before.
Has there been any talk about whether I didn't realize that Chauncey didn't get a carry in the 4th quarter? Do we know if there's any reason for that?
I mean, he got the ball, but I think he caught 2 passes in the 4th quarter.
But I do know Josh, I think, limped off on 2nd down right before that 3rd down sequence ended up happening. It does make me wonder if he doesn't limp off. Is Josh McCray out there on 3rd down and then out there on 4th down again? Now, to everyone's point, like Chauncey should have been out there the way that he was running the ball. I don't think anyone disputes that.
Oh, the joys of breaking down a loss. There's usually no shortage of stuff to talk about there. And before we go to a break, Kipp, anything else we haven't covered on this one? Anything else you want to throw in there?
Goodness. I think, like I said, right guard and right tackle are going to get better. I think my fears about the edge position showed out in this game. They have definitely personnel issues there. The fact that they've only forced 3 turnovers in 4 games kind of bore its head again. They have yet to force a fumble this season. And I think you got young cornerbacks, so it's similar to right guard and right tackle. I think Mello coming into the game looked great. DeMello Jones, welcome to the show. And that is going to be something moving forward where I think decisions need to be made as far as personnel changes in the secondary. I think they got to move some guys around and just like linebacker, Chris Cole, you're going to go down to edge. I mean, I think you bring Justin Williams in. There's a lot of different personnel changes that I think need to be thought about over the next couple of weeks. But I don't think there's any reason why you can't say they don't have the roster available to win the rest of their football games. And I think that's the key point is it's not this was not a game where Georgia got, out-talented off the football field.
Ben, what about you? Anything else you want to cover here?
I think we covered it. I mean, I don't think that. I mean, ultimately, what this loss means mostly is how stressful the rest of the year is going to be because of the margin of error is so thin. So if you win that game, I think everything just looks not just because you win the game and it makes you feel better about your team. I said it already. I don't feel much differently about Georgia as a football team, whether they get that first down on 4th and 1 or whether they don't. I don't feel much differently about Georgia as a football team if Talon Taylor catches that touchdown or doesn't. All it does is change likely the outcome of that game, and it makes everything else a lot easier. I don't think there's a ton of teams out there that are going to be able to exploit Georgia in the passing game the way that Alabama and Tennessee did, but maybe that's something that I'm when Ole Miss comes to town in a few weeks, maybe I'm having a different conversation about how much it is part of Georgia's DNA that teams are going to be able to pass the ball pretty comfortably, especially on 3rd down against it.
Yeah, Ole Miss is the game coming out of this, and I'm like, can Georgia get the stops? Well, we saw this time last year when they played Ole Miss that they could not. The only other thing that I wanted to bring up from this game is this. Okay, if you're watching this live, I've just edited in the all quiet on the Western Front bass that we heard over and over again. Georgia, you've given all the fans PTSD from that. Don't ever play that again. All right, guys, we've got a game to look ahead to coming off of the loss to Alabama. Georgia hosting Kentucky, 12 p.m. Eastern Time. That will be on ABC. We had a chance to talk to Kirby Smart, wide receiver London Humphreys, defensive tackle Jordan Hall on Monday as they turn their attention to Kentucky. And as you can imagine, a lot of the conversation was about moving forward, turning the page, getting ready for the week ahead. Kirby Smart, I thought said all the right things when it comes to Georgia moving on. Said that he knew a lot more about this team than he did a week ago because of how they've responded. He said you can tell that loss hurt them, and he said that when you see how much it hurts, how invested these guys are. I thought Jordan Hall made a really good point. Jordan's one of the best speakers on this team. I always enjoy and appreciate when we get a chance to talk to him. He was asked about the locker room. He was asked about just the conversation coming out of the Alabama loss. This is what he had to say.
Just knowing that it's not over till it's over. You know what I'm saying? The season, like I said, the season didn't start and end with losses. If we would have lost the first game, we still got 11 more games to go. Like, it's a long season ahead of us. And like I said, we built for adversity. I mean, y'all seen it in games we played. Tennessee, an overtime game, we overcame a deficit, came back, fought hard. Even with Bama, we was in a hole in the first half and we couldn't get no stops on defense, and we came out and had a pitch to shut out in the second half. I mean, it wasn't good enough, but you know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like we're just built, we can take a punch and give a punch back, and that's something that we pride ourselves on, and we got to continue to do that day in and day out. But I feel like it's the way we practice and the way we're coached, and our standard here, our standard is to never give up. You know what I'm saying? Until the game is over, 60 minutes or however long it takes is what we say. So till the game's over, till the season's over, we're going to keep pushing that narrative.
Guys, I don't know how much of the interviews you saw with Jordan Hall and London Humphreys, but I mean, I think they made it clear that they're intent on not letting Alabama beat them twice. Ben, just what do you make of the stuff that guys like Jordan had to say? Understanding that they can't linger on this game. There's stuff they can clean up from it, but they know that they can't let Alabama beat them twice.
Well, let's put it this way. Georgia this is not an unfamiliar position Georgia's in. Georgia, I mean, I know they didn't always have an opportunity to play other games afterwards, but Georgia has lost to Alabama in 2017, 2018, 2020, 2021, 2023, 2024, and now 2025. This is not an unfamiliar spot. Georgia knows how to respond and still get ready for other football teams when it loses to Alabama. In fact, more often than not, Georgia responds pretty well after losing to Alabama. You know, last year, lose to Alabama, end up, going on a pretty good run before that loss to Ole Miss. You know, lose to Alabama in the SEC championship game a couple years ago, win a bowl game by 60. Lose to Alabama in 2021, turn around and win by 20 against Michigan, and then win the national championship. And so I think part of Georgia's identity is understanding, and this is similar to what we've talked about with their resiliency in game, that there is an identity that this program has, not this team, but this program has, that it responds well when you're trailing and it responds well after you lose. And I think we've seen that time and time and time again. I think there's probably more questions right now than ever before, just because 2024 saw more losses than we've seen in recent memory. And so is this now just something that's going to be a trend, or is this something where it's just another loss to Alabama? And that's what I don't know, but it sounds like the team appears to be fully bought into, hey, this is where you have to get better. These are the things that you've done well. These are the things that needs to be corrected. And ultimately, losing to Alabama does not entitle Kentucky or Ole Miss or Texas or Auburn or Florida or Mississippi State to line up against you and beat you just because Alabama was able to do it. And I think that we've seen that a lot, where people think that there are more holes in Georgia than there are because Georgia lost to Alabama. And I don't think that just because Alabama can do it, anybody else should feel like they're entitled to be able to do it that season as well.
To kind of change the question, Kipp, looking to Saturday when they play Kentucky, what are you looking for as far as the response? What are some things that you want to see to make you say, okay, they moved it forward and they've turned the page from the Alabama game?
Well, there is that cliche response that you learn more from a loss than you do from a win. And I think that kind of holds true with this weekend. Is you're going to learn about this team's pride, whether this team is still thinking about that loss. Because looking at Kentucky, and this being a noon kickoff, I mean, sure, this could be a hangover game for Georgia, but it should be a get right game for Georgia. I mean, this Kirby's going to say everything he wants to say about Kentucky wanting to be physical, his respect for Stoops, but this is not a good Kentucky football team at all. And I mean, it may be the worst passing offense in the country. They have not discovered the forward pass in this team. And so this is where you should be able to, if you need to make personnel changes, but if you need to look for improvement on the defense, you should be able to do that. Because the two things Georgia didn't do well last season were running the football and stopping explosives in the run game. The opposite this year so far. They've established the run game. There were no runs over 12 yards by Alabama last week. They should be able to stop Kentucky offensively in the first half, not just the second half. And that's really what I'm looking for. Is there's no excuses now. You have an opponent. You should be able to start fast offensively, start fast defensively, and not have to wait till the halftime adjustments. And I think that's the one thing we've learned from this past week, is that in the NIL era with less depth, you can't just go to halftime and figure it out and win a tight football game. You got to coach for 4 quarters. And that's kind of goes back to where everyone's talking about Glenn Schumann and asking for Muschamp, asking for even Mel Tucker and Dan Lanning. Those guys didn't coach Georgia's defense in the NIL era when you don't have draft picks on your 3 deep. It's different when you have to coach this kind of, it's a different football game now. And that's what I'm looking for, is make those adjustments, impact the quarterback and have a fast start, not just offensively, but defensively. Get some 3 and outs. Alabama only had, I think, one of those in this last game. That's tough. Kentucky should be 3 and out most of the game. So that's what I'm looking for is forget about when the game's kicking off and what happened last week. File that one away, but learn from it and come out and try and shut the Kentucky out.
Yeah, I mean, you look at this opponent in a 12 p.m. kickoff. I think I said this leaving the stadium Saturday night. Like, this looks to me like a classic. Georgia is up 10-0 at halftime, and everybody just feels like throwing up because there's just not much to it. But this is an opportunity for Georgia to try to get that bad taste out of their mouths. And this is a bad Kentucky team, like Kipp said. Georgia's a 20.5 favorite, the last number I saw. Kentucky's 2-2. Struggled in that loss last week to South Carolina, had 4 turnovers. Cutter Boley is the quarterback now. They had Zach Calzada, who has been at Texas A&M and Auburn and Incarnate Word, and it was not working out with him. So it's a golden opportunity. I mean, the one thing Kentucky does do well, at least to this point, is running the football, and that's been sort of a trademark of Mark Soup's better teams. Kirby was asked about Seth McGowan, who I believe is Kentucky's lead runner, what he sees in him and the Kentucky run game as a whole, and that's what Kirby had to say.
Their backs are physical. I mean, every time we play them, their offensive line, they have a defensive head coach, Coach Stoops, that believes in running the ball, and they have really good run schemes, and they have really big physical guys, and their backs match their O-line in terms of size, both backs.
The one thing I wanted to add from Kirby talking on Monday was, he said he had learned a lot about his team, which I mentioned a few minutes ago. When he was asked what he learned, he said, we can run the ball and we can stop the run. And if you remember the conversation the entire offseason, that was what Georgia wanted to do. They want to get better at running the ball, and they want to get better at stopping the run. Speaking of running the ball, I thought it was interesting at one point Kirby was asked about Chauncey Bowens, who we raved about earlier, and Nate Frazier, who did not take any carries after he fumbled on Saturday. He was asked about the relationship between those two and what he's seen. So what Kirby had to say.
Yeah, they love each other, man. Nate was the fact that Nate was cheering and happy for Chauncey shows what kind of culture we built here. He was pumped for him, and he was crushed for himself. He's upset and knows that he's got things he's got to work on. He's got to continue to improve at. Nate's not afraid of hard work. He's not afraid to go out there and get to work and improve, and we'll continue to do that. Look, you don't get through this gauntlet of SEC games without having multiple backs and having guys ready, and I feel good about that room.
All right, Ben, I'm going to put you on the spot. You are asked by Coach Smart to make the call on who is the starting running back Saturday against Kentucky. Who are you going with?
It's got to be Chauncey Bowens. I mean, I know what Kirby's going to say. It's whoever practices, whoever has the best week of practice is going to be the one that gets the most reps, whatever. But look, Nate Frazier is an important culture piece, and he even in that game had an explosive run early that impacted the football game. He's someone that you want to be an impact player for you the rest of the season. I think he has to earn his way back into that rotation, and I don't know what earning his way back into that rotation means for Kirby Smart. Does that mean showcasing certain things in practice with enough consistency? Maybe. Does it mean getting a lighter workload in certain spots in the Kentucky and Auburn and Ole Miss weeks leading up to the next bye week, where you prove in small doses that you can be reliable? I don't know. Does it mean that we're not going to see a whole lot of Nate Frazier for a few weeks? That's a possibility too. But I think that Chauncey Bowens, ball security, ability to catch the ball out of the backfield, averaging 10 yards per carry against Alabama, earned a start, earned being what I would consider the lead back. I mean, I think it's clear at this point Josh McCray is going to be used in the certain spots that we can now predict that Josh McCray is going to be used in. And I think that he's so effective in those spots that it doesn't even matter that everybody knows exactly what's coming on that play. I think that he's going to be able to pick up a yard or 2 yards, which makes him limping off on second down before that 4th and 1 situation probably even more painful for everyone. But yeah, I would have to go Chauncey Bowens. I think that he earned it. And I think that one thing he showed me in that game more than I think I have realized at any point with Chauncey Bowens is how much acceleration he had on the edge. I mean, there were multiple times that Alabama cornerbacks are full on back turn, hips swiveling, full out sprints trying to catch Chauncey Bowens. And I will give Alabama's defensive backs credit. Chauncey Bowens easily could have house called that run in the fourth quarter that we wouldn't even been having the third and fourth down sequence, but Alabama's defensive backs found a way to get him on the ground.
Yeah, I just, I think it's a situation where it's pretty clear to me it should be Chauncey Bowens. Kipp, kind of changing the question for you, how do you instill confidence in Nate Frazier? The biggest thing with that fumble against Alabama is this is a recurring issue. He had it as a freshman. He didn't even play at all at Alabama last year because there was concern about his ability to hold on to the football. What would you try to do to try to get Nate Frazier confidence, really going into this game, but really the majority of what's left of the season?
Well, that's what you tell them. You push them hard in practice and say, we're hoping that we get to play well over 10 more games. And just from last season that whoever starts in this game, could be banged up by the next game. I mean, you watched as Trevor Etienne last season got banged up, and we needed you to be the bell cow for this offense, even when you were still having those ball security issues. So you know what you need to focus on. You also know that throughout the course of the season, we're going to need you in big moments. And right now, we're going to ask you to earn those big moments by putting you in probably, as we're predicting this show on Tuesday, lesser impact moments. He's going to get probably the carries where the game is well in hand, or when Georgia feels more comfortable having the risk of a turnover to have in the game, or if Georgia's behind in the game and they're not getting any explosives from the offense, they might call upon them in that situation. If we're thinking about that Ole Miss game, and maybe Georgia's down 10, and maybe Ole Miss is stuffing Chauncey Bowens at the line of scrimmage, and they need someone to come in who might be able to get to the perimeter a little bit better, they're going to ask Nate Frazier to be that guy, because Chauncey Bowens has earned the right to be the starter as a 225-pound running back who gets the top speed very quickly and shows great balance and breaks tackles because he is a bigger back. But I think it's fair to say he's probably not a top 2 fastest back in the backfield. And so if there's a team that's able to square him up and stop him, you're going to need, Dwight Phillips. You're going to need Nate Frazier to bring a different skill set to this backfield. That's why you have those different guys. That's why you have Josh McCray, who's now established as the short yardage guy. So I just think that knowing what Nate Frazier brings to the table, they know they're going to need him. And so it's on the coaching staff, it's on Josh Crawford, the rest of them, to make sure he knows he is going to be needed later this season.
So look into this matchup and look into this game. Kipp, you talked about this a little already, but what are you looking for from Georgia? What do you need to see as they, face an opponent that is a multi-touchdown underdog? What are you watching for specifically on Saturday?
Offensively, some explosives. I think Gunnar Stockton utilizing, like I said, the intermediate passing game. If he's got time in the pocket against this Kentucky defense, it doesn't have to all be fastballs. Whether it's you can't rely on just screens and bombs to be your passing game. And so let's see what the middle of the field looks like. Let's maybe see if we can return to utilizing. I mean, I think Oscar Delp has made some plays for Georgia and Lawson Lucky. They've both been open on plays. Make sure that you let them know, thanks for all your help blocking. Here's a throw or two in this game. That would be good. Continuing to get more development out of your true freshman right guard and right tackle. You've established those are going to be your guys. You got Juan Gaston, you got Dontrell Glover in there. You're rotating Bo Hewley in. Continue to get more snaps for those guys. It's going to be great. I don't think, as far as the edge position, you're going to answer that in a week. I think that is the one spot on this roster where you could say this is probably a personnel issue for Georgia moving forward. But okay, I mean, like I said, switch it up at linebacker, get Justin Williams some more snaps in there, see what Chris Cole looks like on the edge, and maybe contemplate making a move in the secondary. I think Ja'Cory Thomas has played well. Move Jonah Aguero to safety. Maybe try Dalen Everett at star and put your kids out there. Just put DeMello and Robinson out there and see if they can handle just playing cornerback through extended snaps. See what happens, because I will say Kyron Jones, they kind of picked on Kyron Jones out there at safety. So that is kind of that one position on defense more than really anywhere. You might want to see if you got some other options out there because the safety play is not up to the Georgia standard so far through 4 games.
To your point on the Ryan Williams dropped touchdown, that was Kyron Jones, who was supposed to be back there and got lucky that Ryan Williams dropped it. For me, I mean, Kipp hit on a lot of it. I mean, I want to see them give Ernest Green another break and maybe start Juan Gaston at right tackle. I thought he looked pretty good, but even to mix him and Bo Hewley, get those guys out there. And I think DeMello Jones is ready to start at corner. Give him a game against a bad Kentucky passing offense, and let's see what happens. We know that they are not hesitant to mix different guys in there if they don't like what they're seeing. But start him, see how he plays, and see what he's able to do. But, again, my biggest thing is do not sleepwalk through the start of this game. I mean, I already think that the turnout is not probably going to be all that great. I know the energy will probably be lacking for a 12 p.m. kickoff. Come out firing. Get a stop on defense. Score at least 1 touchdown on your first 3 drives. And give the fans something to be excited about, because they're upset, which I get that. But take advantage of another home game and see what you can get going. Ben, what are you looking for on Saturday? What do you want to see from Georgia in this one?
Well, Georgia's 0-4 against the spread so far this season, so maybe cover that 20.5, I think is where it's at right now. I think Georgia, I saw the statistic before the Alabama game, they were like 9-24-1 over since 2023 started, worst in all of FBS against the spread, which isn't completely surprising because Vegas loves Georgia, and Georgia hasn't been as good in 2023, 2024, and 2025 as it was in 2021 and 2022 when lines started, favoring Georgia a lot more. So yeah, I mean, I think it sounds simple, but win comfortably against Kentucky. Do what you should do against Kentucky. What's interesting is we've seen Kentucky play a touchdown game against Ole Miss, and then we've seen them lose by 20 to a South Carolina team that's reeling. Like, as we know from watching Georgia in the past 10 years, like the Kentucky that Georgia gets isn't always the same as the Kentucky that a lot of other teams seem to get. I mean, we just saw it last year. Everyone thinks Kentucky's maybe the worst team in FBS early in the season, and then all of a sudden they play Georgia to a 1-point game in Lexington. I don't think they're going to have the advantage of Georgia's first road SEC game. But look, Georgia just needs to win this game comfortably. Georgia needs to run the ball well. I do think Georgia needs to get some of these perimeter playmakers in the passing game involved. Like, just get as many people involved as you can. Try and get more confidence against SEC opponents from Gunner to a long list of guys. Noah Thomas, Talon Taylor, London Humphreys, Dylan Bell, Colby Young. Get as many people involved as possible. Tight ends didn't have a catch against Alabama either. Make sure that those tight ends get more involved in the passing game than they have been early in the season. But really, I think it just comes down to take an early lead. Don't be playing from behind again like you have been in all these Power 4 games for the last year, and win a game comfortably that you should win comfortably at home.
Well, as much as fans might not want to hear it, Georgia did have some good news on Saturday, Ben. They pick up a pair of 2027 offensive linemen. Tell us about both of those guys and what Georgia has done to this point in the 2027 cycle.
Well, I will start with Kipp Adams, who was actually the second of the 2 to commit during the day, but he is an offensive tackle that Georgia has been wanting to land for a long, long time now. He's, when you circle the 3 or 4 offensive linemen in the Peach State in the 2027 class, Kipp Adams' name was right there front and center as someone that Georgia was going to try and land. He has told us at Dogs 24/7 for a few months now that we're right in that window of his timeline. He had always said it's going to be Georgia or Tennessee most likely in October. Kind of makes sense that he gets to a game right at the end of September if he's feeling about Georgia the way that he is, that he's in that environment around coaches on that game day, wants to just lock things down. This is a guy that ranks number 45 overall in the 24/7 sports rankings for the 2027 recruiting class. We've talked about Dontrell Glover a lot. We've talked about Bo Hewley a lot. This is another guy from Langston Hughes High School who has talked with me about building that Langston Hughes pipeline, and that he talked with Donnie Glover. And he hasn't been at Langston Hughes his whole career. He wasn't playing with those guys to the extent that Bo Hewley and Dontrell Glover were playing with each other early in their careers, but he has been in contact with Bo and been in contact with Dontrell Glover about, hey, there's something here that Langston Hughes has. There's something special in the water. Like, come join and be a part of it as well. I think he was at the Tennessee game 2 weeks ago. And I think that probably, I'm not saying that tipped the scales, but it probably helped make it easier for him. He was bouncing back and forth between Georgia and Tennessee. And I think just once again, seeing Georgia establish itself in that rivalry probably only reinforces how you feel about things. So that's a big time pickup for Georgia. And I'll say this is maybe more of a VIP note than a podcast note, but for those that are with us here an hour into the podcast, I'm going to give you a little one. I think Georgia's in a really, really good spot right now with Joshua Sam Appel out of Douglas County. I think that when you look at the state of Georgia offensive tackles in the 2027 class, Kelsey Adams and Joshua Sam Appel were the two guys that Georgia absolutely, I don't want to say had to have, but I would put them in the Juan Gaston camp of it's going to take a lot for somebody else to be able to get that player away from Georgia in this class, and Georgia's going to do everything that it can to make sure of that. They've already got Kelsey Adams. Now they're working on Joshua Sam Appel, who I think is someone that will likely commit sooner rather than later as well. Subscribe to Dogs 24/7 because I'm going to have more with both of these guys later in the week. And I think that it will be well received just because of how important offensive line recruiting is right now. Kyson Mallard, as I said on the Saturday show, I don't know as much about Kyson Mallard as I do Kelsey Adams, partially just because Kelsey Adams he's had a Georgia offer for as long as I can remember. He is, top 50 prospect in the country. And so I'm just more exposed to who he is as a player. But Kyson Mallard, 6'5", 290 pounds, interior offensive lineman, someone that Georgia has taken a look at a lot throughout the last year plus. They obviously showed interest into. When you get in that environment on a game day against Alabama, sometimes you just say, you know what, I don't need to see anymore. I just want to lock this thing down. And so he committed. It's so early, especially with a recruit that I wouldn't say was like a top of the board target for Georgia, that I think you always want to see how things play out. We've seen it happen in the past. Vance Spafford committed to Georgia around this time last year. He doesn't end up committing. Obviously a little bit different when you're a slot receiver from the West Coast versus being an interior offensive lineman from the home state. But we'll see some of those things play out. But I think of the two commitments that Georgia landed on Saturday, Kelsey Adams was the one that Georgia felt like it had to have, and it got him.
Yeah, like Ben said, stay glued to Dogs 24/7. He'll have you hooked up with the latest recruiting news there, and some good news. And like Ben said, offensive line recruitment, always something that is front of mind for the Georgia Bulldogs. All right, coaching carousel check-in, and this one's kind of a bittersweet one. Sam Pittman out at Arkansas was there, just a little over 5 seasons, being shown the door after a really rough showing against Notre Dame. An old friend of the podcast, Bobby Petrino, is the interim head coach there. He is also vying for the full-time job, and you can get your neck brace memes ready in case that were to happen. So, Kipp, I'll start with you. I want you to predict who Arkansas hires here. This is one of the tougher SEC jobs. Sam Pittman had some high highs. I think 2021 they won 9 games, but usually Arkansas is sort of scrapping its way up, and they do have the advantage of no longer being in the SEC West, which was just killer for them in Mississippi State during the 90s and 2000s. But who does Arkansas wind up hiring?
I mean, they should go all in on John Sumrall, the Tulane head coach. I think, there's been support for different candidates so far, and I think you have to take that in consideration because right now, like you want to keep the equity you've built up in your fan base. I think, Arkansas, early on under Pittman, he took them to some different heights. I mean, this was a program that was kind of falling by the wayside in the conference. It's just so competitive right now. The 16 teams that are there, I think you want to make sure that you don't lose this fan base because they can check out right now and just say, you know what, we're not going to worry about it. We're not going to be considered competitive anymore at this stage. You don't want to get this coaching hire wrong, but I just think that what Summerall's done so far, I think it's just really, really impressive. I think you make such a strong case because he took Troy and went 23-4. I think right there, I was like, okay, this is a guy to keep an eye on. But I just think that, what he's done against Power 4 teams, he's beaten Northwestern, he's beaten Duke this season already. He's gone 13-6 there. I think right now, he's got the SEC ties, and everything kind of points to him being popular with recruits in the area, which is also important. I just think he's the kind of guy that is young enough, a bright young mind, and kind of a no-nonsense guy, which checks every box that I think you should want if you're an Arkansas program. And so if you can bring in a coach with a 36-10, 36-11 record, you do it because the coaching searches are not going to get any easier. I think he's going to have other options. And so you throw the book at him and see what he says.
Yeah, John Summerall, I think, will be coaching somewhere else in 2026 other than Tulane where he is right now. But Kip hit on the thing about other jobs. There's a job I think might be coming open in a state he used to coach in that I think would make a lot of sense. But John's going to have his options, and we'll have to see how that plays out. Ben, who's your pick for the Arkansas job? Who do you think the Razorbacks wind up hiring?
Well, it's not a surprise that all these jobs that are now opening, I keep saying how good of a job is this job, and it's not a surprise that's the job where these coaches, they're the places where these coaches seem to be having a lot of trouble keeping jobs. Is SMU a better job than Arkansas?
That's the question.
Is Purdue a better job than Arkansas?
I would say SMU is a better job than Arkansas, but that Arkansas is a better job than Purdue.
Barry Odom obviously coached at Arkansas recently. He's been an SEC head coach in the past. He has done some things in the transfer portal, as we know, with Marquise Easley and Nitro Tuggle being there. Michael Jackson is there as well. They've sort of turned into the Georgia transfer portal destination. Barry, I guess I was going to leave it up to you guys to tell me if you thought if you thought Arkansas was a better job than SMU. I was going to say Rhett Lashley takes that job because he has ties to Arkansas. He theoretically, I would think, would want to get back to being a head coach in the SEC at some point. But when you've got an athletic director or whoever it was that was speaking that was not giving the most resounding review of the financial support that Sam Pittman was getting. And I know that was taken a little bit out of context, but it wasn't like, I don't think a bunch of Power 4 head coaches are going to be flocking to this job, but I'll go with Barry Odom for the sake of the exercise, even though I'm not very confident in that pick.
No, I like the pick because it seemed like there was sort of a drop-off, especially defensively. And all due respect to Travis Williams, but Arkansas's defense was real bad this year. So I think that pick makes a lot of sense.
It's funny that I'm asking this. Is Illinois a better job than Arkansas?
I kind of think it is.
The reason I asked that is because I know that Brett Bielema got it written into his contract in the last 2 years when people were thinking he was always going to take the Iowa job or the Indiana job or some of these other Big Ten jobs, he had it written into his contract that he would not take any other jobs in the Big Ten, which to me was a signal like he wanted to get back to the SEC at some point, and he was willing to write into his contract that he wouldn't take any other Big Ten jobs, but that he still wanted to find his way back to the SEC. I don't know if that would be a, if there would be, I don't know what the relationship is there whatsoever. But I don't know. That's another interesting one.
The one to watch is Rhett Lashley because he is an Arkansas guy. He went to Arkansas, but Ben brought up the point. Is Arkansas a better job than SMU? I don't think it is. So it's really going to be up to Rhett Lashley to decide, is this the career move I want to make? If you got something, Ben, you want to share?
Well, this is stupid, but does the Big Ten have a Texas team?
The Big Ten does not.
The reason I'm thinking that is I'm just thinking future conference expansion. Who are some teams that are in the Big 12 or the ACC that might be able to get into one of the Big 2 conferences, which is where everybody wants to be, and why, if you are a head coach at SMU, even if it's viewed as maybe a better job, you would want to get to Arkansas because it is in one of these 2 conferences where you're just going to have more money. You're just going to have more opportunities. Now, the competition is going to be much harder, but SMU is a job or a school that could make sense for the Big Ten if they were trying to break into Texas, which is just sort of me kind of brainstorming on the fly here.
So my prediction is Rhett stays put at SMU. I think he's got a good thing there, even if Mama calls. I think you got to do what's best. And my prediction, Ben was throwing out there a Brett Bielema reunion. I think they hire Bobby Petrino. I think they talked themselves into. The thing that Ben just talked about was, we just didn't give Sam Pittman enough resources. If we put up the money, Bobby's the brains behind the offense. He can do this, and here's the thing too. Obviously, he's the interim coach. He's already done this before at Louisville. You remember he got a second stint at Louisville, and he got Lamar Jackson. It wasn't all bad, but by the end, it was a train wreck. So I'm going to say that they pursue other guys, that they go after Rhett, and Rhett turns them down. John Summerall takes another job. I'm watching Auburn. I think John Summerall makes a lot of sense at Auburn.
Oh, we're going to do this again. We're going to do the fire DeBoer before DeBoer beats Kirby, and then we're going to do the fire Hugh Freeze before Hugh Freeze beats Kirby now.
Kipp, any?
I mean, I as much as I would find it entertaining to see Petrino get the job, that would mean wouldn't he have to have a respectable run over the rest of the season? Do you think he's really gonna, never mind that they're playing at Tennessee this weekend, then they play Texas A&M? How are they going to do at LSU, at Texas, and then a Missouri team that has looked really strong? I don't know if he's going. How many wins does he have to get to impress compared to what Sam Pittman done? He's not going to go 500 against the rest of the schedule. If you beat an Auburn or a Mississippi State, that still has you going like 2-5. I don't think that just seems like more of the same to me. So, but you're also right. They're not going to get their first or second choice either. So you're going to have to take a shot on hoping like maybe a guy like Jamie Chadwell isn't, I don't know, no one's even talking about him anymore because Liberty stinks. But you're going to have to go that route and see if you can just get lucky on a guy. I don't think Jeff Trail at Texas State, that's probably more in line with, what they're going to be able to get. And that's probably just kind of an indictment right now of like I said before, the conference is getting very competitive, and you guys are both right. Like, coaching in the SEC has its merits, but also it comes with much more pressure than, if you're at SMU and you just took them to a college football playoff, I think you just bought yourself like 4 or 5 years of probably equity, even though they're 2-2 right now. I think you just look at the fact that they might be able to get lucky every 5 years, and I think they'll be ecstatic with that at SMU. So I agree with you guys. I think they're going to have to go through some names and churn some guys and probably just get an up-and-comer and hope for the best.
Kipp lost me when he said Bobby Petrino and respectable in the first sentence. I knew that we were probably too far gone. I want to say Jeff Traylor at UTSA. Let's show some respect to the Roadrunners.
Mm-hmm.
But two, he's a former Arkansas assistant, and then GJ Kinney at Texas State has done a very good job. I could see him being in the mix there as well. All right, Georgia men's basketball minute. Pretty notable development last Friday. Mike White gets a 3-year extension. That gets him through the 2031 season. He was part of several extensions that were announced for Georgia. I know the women's tennis coach was extended along with the equestrian coach. Very productive Friday for Georgia before the Alabama game. I think there was a lot of debate about this decision, extending Mike White, given what he's accomplished to this point. I can't argue with the decision. I think that getting Georgia back to the NCAA tournament for the first time in a decade was a step in the right direction. I know fans were frustrated with some of the losses along the way, but to me, this is sort of setting him up for what's next, that he has taken the program to this point and he's got to sustain it. He can't let this program plateau or be even worse, which isn't going to be easy with how deep the SEC is. So for me, I understand the extension. I think that it makes sense given what Mike has accomplished so far, but it's kind of a stepping stone to what's next. And if Georgia can't sustain it, then he won't be the coach for the majority, or for the entirety, I should say, of that contract. Ben, did you have any thoughts on the extension, making sure that Mike White is under contract through 2031?
Well, I think we thought the timing of it was a little bit weird when we first saw it, but then when I saw that there were a bunch of other assistants that were getting their extensions too, it seemed like it was just that window. That was Josh Brooks' window for making some extension decisions there. So, no, I mean, I think everyone's going to ask whenever you sign an extension, like who are you who are you keeping him away from or whatever. I think it's more complicated than that because agents want their coaches to have certain contract lengths when it comes to recruiting types of things. And, I get it. People are going to say, oh, you went to the tournament for the first time since you've been here and you got, blown out by Gonzaga. What earned you an extension? That's just how it works. I mean, it sounds stupid, but it's just the way that it works. And so it makes sense that he was going to eventually get an extension as long as he wasn't getting let go. It's kind of what it is. You're either getting fired or you're getting an extension. That's how it works in coaching contracts nowadays.
You nailed it. And I did want to mention it's the track coach, the women's tennis coach, and equestrian all got extensions along with Mike White. And the thing, too, fans frustrated, oh, we could get a better coach. Just imagine a scenario where they got rid of Mike coming off of an NCAA tournament. Who are you going to sell that job to? That wasn't good enough for a program that hadn't been there in a decade. Like, you roll with Mike and you see if he can continue and sustain the success going forward. Kipp, any thoughts on Mike White's extension?
Kind of a shrug shoulders for me. His contract wasn't up through until the 2028. You didn't need to do it now. If there's a recruit that's on the fence and you felt that's why you needed to tell him he's going to be there through 2031, what kind of recruit needs Mike White to be on the coaching staff in 2031 that's thinking of coming to Georgia right now? You could have waited until he had sustained success, get to the tournament twice. But also we'll wait and see when Jordan gets the contract details. If it's just, again, he's not in the top 10 in the conference in salary. It's kind of in line. His salary last season, I thought, was just in line with where Georgia is as a program. And I don't think anyone should be thinking about replacing Mike White. I think it's not extend or fire. Doesn't have to be one or the other. You had a good season. It obviously ended poorly in the postseason, but you checked the boxes you were supposed to. Can you check the boxes 2 seasons in a row? That's where I would probably set the bar in an extension. But if we're not talking about, I can't imagine there's a buyout issue here. If he stinks it up for multiple years, I don't think that's going to be an issue either. But if you get the contract details in 4 or 5 weeks and it looks like they jacked him up to the 6th highest paid coach, or there's a $20 million, there's some crazy buyout, my opinion will probably change on that. Right now, Sure. Let's just see what Georgia looks like this season if they're able to shoot lights out. Like, I mean, the offseason roster churn looked like he did fairly well. We'll see how those bigs do when they need board slating games. But overall, it's the same expectation as last offseason. So I think everything's in line where you want to be as a Georgia basketball fan.
Well, we will wrap up the episode right there. I appreciate Kipp and Ben for popping on. Thanks to everyone who watched this live, everyone who is watching or listening to it after the fact. Please go to Dogs 24/7, subscribe, get ready for the continuation of this football season. Men's basketball is, at this point, they're a few weeks away from starting a couple of exhibitions. They play Georgia State and Troy before they get to their season opener on November 3rd, so we'll have that coverage. Baseball had a scrimmage last week. Olivia Sayer was all over that. Olivia will lead our baseball coverage, so get ready and subscribe for that. Go check out our YouTube, Dogs 24/7. Please subscribe to the Junkyard Dawgcast wherever you get your podcast. Rate, review. That helps us so much. We had a ton of downloads of that instant reaction from the Alabama game, so I want to just share my appreciation to everyone who watched or listened to that because that helped us a lot. Go to our TikTok, Dogs 24/7. We'll have some content there as we continue getting ready for the Kentucky game. Hoping to have a preview podcast either Thursday or Friday. Looking at the Cat's Paws Cole Park to have him on and help us learn a little bit more about the Wildcats before Saturday. So we'll end the episode right there. For Kipp Adams and Ben Wolk, I'm Jordan Hill. Until next time, take care, everybody.